What do we hate about MMOs? We're going to watch a video, Dungeons and Dragons Online, and what sucks and doesn't suck. So stick around.
MMORPGs can, at times, be really fun games, banding together with large groups of players doing epic stuff like fighting dragons, sieging cities, and hunting down legendary loot to spike your dopamine. However, as someone that's been covering MMOs on YouTube for the past 8 years, I've realised that a lot of them have similar problems. Oftentimes when I'm doing my first impression pros and cons list, a lot of the cons for one MMO could be directly applied to another MMO, and it's made me realise that there's certain things MMOs do that really piss me off. So today I'm going to have a bit of a rant about all of the things that I hate about MMORPGs. But first, today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is a
And we are going to add our 3 cents to this conversation as well.
completely free mobile RPG with over 80 million global players worldwide. The game features top-notch graphics and offers both casual and competitive gaming, where players can collect over 700 unique champions, customize them, fight in-game bosses, or compete in real-time battles in the arena. Raid is now increasing its roster of awesome looking champions with a brand new rarity, Mythical, a step above legendary champions. These new mythical champions have a special new mechanic called Metamorph that allows them to change between 2 different forms. This transformation grants them a fresh appearance, new abilities and enhanced skills. Mythical champions are summoned from primal shards and both of their forms utilise the same gear and skills, so make sure to check out the new update, and if you click my link or scan the QR code on screen, you'll also get a free starter pack with a bunch more in-game loot. And on top of that, if you log into Raid on 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd, you'll also get the legendary champion Sun Wukong for free. Click the link in the description below to download Raid Shadow Legends now. Inventory management and tedious looting. One thing that makes me want to instantly quit an MMO is if it becomes quickly obvious that I'll need to spend a significant amount of time sorting through my inventory.
Yes, I mean, this is one of DDO's biggest problems, being a game that is now over 15 years old. I literally have 40 tunes. I play one character. The rest of my characters, I even have another account. They just hold loot. There's no good inventory system in Dungeons and Dragons Online. It is awful. They nickel and dime you for 10 slot. They charge you so much real money for them. Look, I'll tell you what I want to see in Dungeons and Dragons Online. I want to see VIP subscriptions that give you unlimited shared account bank. Unsub as a VIP, you get the amount of shared bank space that you bought with physical money every 10 slots. So let's say you have 150. If you sub as a VIP, that goes to infinite. You could throw 4,000 things in there. You unsub, you cannot then put anything else in. It becomes like a TR cache. You can only pull out until you hit that number of slots that you own. So let's say you pull out and now you have 149 items. You've got one open slot. You can put an item back in there until you resub as a VIP again.
Whether it be from straight up running out of space after a few minutes of killing mobs, or the game just bombarding me with useless items to fill up my bags that don't really need to exist. Some games do this to sell you more inventory space. Others do it because the devs don't play their own game enough to realise it's an issue. I've played some MMOs where you're also expected to loot every item from each individual mob kill, and I just end up asking myself why. Are the profits generated from selling inventory space and pets worth the game being so significantly worse with such design? I'm honestly not sure. Black Desert Online is an example of an MMO where you get so many random event items and useless outgated gear drop that it makes you want to uninstall. Lost Ark is another one. Even with the loot filter, your bags are rammed after 2 chaos dungeons, then you've got to spend time deciding if what's drop is worth selling or not, alongside having to constantly have like 2 rows of your inventory constantly filled with battle items.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the point. Like, if I log into DDO, I could literally spend hours going through inventory. I don't, because I just play. But what happens is my inventory gets filled, my shared inventory gets filled, and eventually there will come a day where I just have to log in and like make a new tune and just dump everything from my shared bank into that tune, just so I can continue playing normally. There's so many. If I look at my my shared crafting storage too, there's just so many different unique tokens. Like now we have cards, these cards from this Illithid event. 4 unique cards that we add to all of the other unique items that we have from all the different parts of the game. I have over 1,000 slots and they're almost all full. It's just there's too much stuff. I also have probably, I don't even know, 50,000 filigrees maybe that are in bags. They also can go into crafting storage. It's just there's way too many systems in DDO that are not utilized by other systems. So what they could do is just make a universal crafting system where everything is shared, or just get rid of some of the older systems that are no longer viable. Either that, or if you want to refresh them into some sort of a universal token. Great example is how the old Cannith crafting was and versus how it is now. It's still sort of wildly crazy, but it's a lot better than it was. You used to make lesser essences and greater essences, and they simplified it all, and that was a great change that they did. And so that just needs to happen again. More stuff needs to be condensed and solidified into one system to get rid of the 45 million systems that we have.
Before adding an item to the game, I wish devs would ask themselves the following questions. 1. Does this item really need to exist? 2. Could this item be stored in its own separate inventory that the player doesn't need to deal with? And 3. Does adding this item take the player out of the gameplay to make a decision as to whether or not the item is useless and needs to be destroyed? Personally, I hate having to squint my eyes reading and spending time trying to figure out if the stuff in my inventory is useful. This is made easier though when games display an estimated value for the item right from the inventory, or do some kind of UI pop-up alerting me that I've received a rare drop that I should care about. Looting should be a dopamine spike and an exciting moment in an MMO, so games that fuck this up are clearly doing something wrong. Having to dig through external sources to search for a build. Let's be honest, almost every MMO nowadays requires that you go to an external website to search for a viable build for your class, and MMOs are so imbalanced that not playing a viable build will either get you kicked.
DDO is one of those things where it's extremely difficult to come up with a build unless you look at a build guide or use a program like DDO Builder in order to help you plan out what is going to happen. Now, in regards to Dungeons & Dragons Online, I think one of the strengths that the game has is its millions of different possible builds. We don't usually function the way that typical MMOs function with the big three, you know, even though we've moved sort of closer to that with a tank, a healer, and a DPS, our builds sort of can do it all. So it is possible for you to build a tank that can heal and also DPS. It won't do it as good as a purely dedicated tank or healer, but you can certainly do it. And that's one of the great things about DDO. I think that having the builds isn't such a bad thing. I think that having build guides, and maybe I'm saying that because I'm biased because I make build guides for people, but there were a lot of other MMOs that I played where people would post build guides, and it was just for a very specific, like Lord of the Rings Online is a great example. You know, you can do the blue line if you want to be more defensive oriented or tanky. So you could do a build guide on which skills in the red line you wanted to use, for example. But for DDO, it more comes down to the idea that you have based on your Dungeons and Dragons experience, which that makes it a little bit different because a lot of MMOs are only games. They're not based on a a game that's pen and paper. So
from groups, not invited, or struggle to clear content. For me, I just want to get into the action as quickly as possible, so if I need to spend a lot of time digging through builds on Google, reading pages upon pages of information, then spend a lot of time in-game actually implementing said build through the UI, or buying 30 different components off the auction house, by the time I'm ready to actually play the game, I'm already annoyed. Why don't more MMOs just do us a favour and implement community voted builds right into the UI, similar to what Dota 2 does? Theory crafters could receive rewards for getting a certain amount of upvotes, builds would be more up to date, and Fextra Life's legal view botting would be less effective. Daily chores and time gates. A mistake we've seen quite a few MMO devs make over the years is implementing daily systems combined with time gates that make players feel like they need to work through a list of chores every day before getting to the content that they actually want to do. I can understand why devs think
I feel this way about dailies. People do dailies, like people in DDO will do Reaper dailies, and they'll go through the harbor and they'll go through the Gatekeeper's Grove and they'll just do all these dailies farming Reaper points. And it's always been such a massive turnoff to me to even think about doing that kind of gameplay. I'm just not interested in doing that. I understand that dailies are good for most MMOs in the sense that it can give people who don't know what to do something to do, because a lot of people need to be directed to what to do. But whereas I'm sort of self-sufficient and I sort of know what I want to do already, unless I specifically was farming to raise my Reaper point score, which is why people do Reaper dailies in DDO, I personally probably wouldn't join a group. I have in the past, but I get quickly bored doing that. For me, it's way more exciting to do content by myself just to see if I can do it, or to try to solo some older content, or to just play around with what the current expansion is, to do whatever the newest content is and sort of figure out all the different things that are going on with that particular content. I spent a lot of time looking around Isle of Dread, for example. I just bought the new update, which I need to explore, which I probably will do.
This way, as you want to retain players and give them a reason to log in every day, but from the player's point of view, it makes them burn out of the game way quicker than just having more flexibility. What usually happens is players will do the chores for a few weeks, then they'll miss a day, then another, and eventually ask themselves, if I'm spending half of my playtime doing chores that I don't really find fun, then why am I playing in the first place? Then they quit. This has happened to me with a few MMOs in the past. The first one that comes to mind was Arcade Unchained when it first released. The entire endgame progression system was tied to dailies and weeklies that rewarded you with scrolls to upgrade your gear. I did it for a few weeks and very quickly it made me sick of the game despite actually having fun with other content outside.
I can say that when I played Lord of the Rings online, I never did a daily, ever. I just wasn't interested in it. The last time I really played Lord of the Rings online, though, was around Moria, when Moria released. But I burn out very quickly doing that. You know, that key quest, like, I burn out really quick. I end up buying the keys if I need them, because as the event goes, people end up selling the keys cheap, and it's much easier for me mentally to just say, okay, I'm going to spend however many Astral Shards to buy 10 keys than to spend the few hours to farm out 10 keys. I just don't have the mental stamina to do that. I'd much rather just do something else.
Side of that, another MMO that made me burn out quite fast with its dailies at release was Lost Ark. I think I kept up with the daily, weekly grind for 2 months, then I took a week off and felt a massive weight off my shoulders. I think most of us have enough daily chores to deal with in the real world, so adding to that list of chores as a game, which is supposed to be an escape from reality, is pretty much always a bad idea. Remember the days when making gold in an MMO was actually something you'd need to think about? The feeling of getting a rare drop and being excited because of how
Somebody actually just said this on the TDO forum. We have platinum, gold, silver, copper in game, and yet it's not useful for anything. The plat market is dead on every server. Nobody uses plat. The only thing that you might need plat for is when you respec yourself, or if you want to repair your gear. Other than that, the addition of all the other currencies that DDO has made platinum, gold, silver, and copper completely worthless.
Valuable it was, leveling up your crafting and gathering so you could make money consistently, and you'd get little dopamine spikes whenever you saw a rare gatherable resource out in the world. For many MMOs nowadays, this is a thing of the past because they straight up sell you in-game currency on the cash shop. You've got RuneScape's bonds, the WoW token, Lost Ark's gem to gold conversion, Albion Online's gold to silver conversion, BDO allows you to sell cash shop outfits for raw silver, and the list goes on.
In DDO, we have DDO points, we have astral shards, and then we have all the different materials that you get for doing the specific events. There's mats for the dinosaur areas, there's crystals for the Feywild area, and a lot of those currencies are bound to account, so it's not like you can use them to trade with other players, but there is an astral shard market that allows you to, while you can't directly trade or gift someone DDO points unless you get a special code from SSG, you can post items on the auction house for astral shards, but it's very convoluted, and the question quickly would come up, like, could you, if you had to, tell me how much real world dollar amount in United States dollars an astral shard has? One astral shard or one DDO point? Or how many DDO points are in one astral shard? Or what about 10 astral shards? Like, you could probably tell me, hey, I know if I spend so many DDO points, I can buy 1,000 astral shards. And I know if I buy so many DDO points, I have to spend so much money. But it just gets very complicated. And that's all done on purpose. Keeping the value mysterious is something that occurs not just in DDO or Lord of the Rings Online, but every MMO. And some games are much, much worse than DDO and Lotro. Genshin Impact is a great example of a game that has so many different currencies that are worth who knows what. It's very, very confusing, and not a surprise. That game made like $2 or $3 billion last year. People just spend a lot of money on it. They don't realize how much money they're spending.
Some MMOs claim that providing these services combats real-world trading, but in reality, does it really? For me, if I see that an MMO is willing to undermine the integrity of their game, then I'd be more likely to engage in RMT, as I'd probably be getting way better value from the gold sellers anyway. You could argue that gold selling has always been a thing in MMOs, so why shouldn't devs provide this service themselves?
This is a great example. In DDO's history, when the game was young, there used to be a lot of gold sellers that would log in, and that was something that they had a problem with. That's one of the reasons why there's no mailboxes in Korthos. People have said that's because it's a dead game and nobody plays it, so it's not worth the gold farmers' time. But I think that has maybe another reason that we don't see them, and that's because in-game plat is valueless, really. Like I said, there's nothing really to use it for. SSG has sort of made it so that all of the value comes from real-world purchased currency, their DDO points or the astral shards, and it's not in a gold seller's time to log in and farm for astral shards, because the other thing about astral shards or DDO points is they're tied to a specific server. Like, astral shards are tied to a specific server, DDO points are tied to a specific account.
The difference is that for most MMOs, RMT is against the terms of service, so you're basically putting your account at risk. For me, this is enough of a deterrent, so long as it's actually enforced by the devs. But now that most MMOs sell in-game gold, it's basically put a real-life dollar amount on every activity and item in the game. If you earn more than minimum wage, are you really going to spend 6 hours gathering and crafting to make $2 per hour worth of gold, when you could just do an hour of overtime and buy your gold instead? Not only does having a dollar amount tied to everything you do in-game take away from the escapism of an MMO, but it also makes vast amounts of the game's content feel completely pointless, and this feeling only gets worse with the more money that you make IRL. If I was broke, I'd probably still want to earn all of my money legitimately because I'd have no other choice. I'd get to fully enjoy the economy side of a game, but if I'm earning six figures, then that side of the game basically doesn't exist if an MMO allows me to buy gold from the cash shop or doesn't punish RMT.
It's one of the problems with whales in the game, that they'll blow out the economy very quickly. It's one of the things, like, for example, for this Illithid event that's occurring right now, the quests, the unique extreme challenge dungeons drop cards, and it takes a while. They don't drop a lot of cards, so it would take a while farming through these to do them. A whale who in real life makes, let's say they make $1 million, they could just log in and spend money, buy Astral Shards, and just buy up all the cards that are on the auction house and then just use the decks that way. That sort of, while it would help the people who are in game farming those quests to make some money, some Master Shards, it completely blows away the in-game economy, because now you've got a real outside currency affecting the in-game economy, artificially injecting and then raising prices, because what'll happen is the people selling those cards, if they all sell out, they'll raise all the prices. And so then somebody in-game who doesn't have $1 million and is actually playing the game would not be able to purchase any of those cards because they would be out of their reach for Astral Shards. And since nobody would spend any amount of time posting them for platinum because platinum is worthless, an in-game player with no money in real life would actually be stuck farming for all of the cards from this event.
So how do you actually fix this? There's two ways. Number one, not selling gold on your cash shop, and ban players either permanently or for 6 months who buy gold from RMT websites. Most players won't want to risk losing an account with thousands of hours of time investment. Number two, straight up disable player-to-player trading and have an auction house with price limits like Black Desert Online. Basically implement BDO's trading system with...
I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like it if you weren't allowed to trade with other players, or if the auction house was limited. I don't really know if there's a way to successfully fix DDO's economy. Whenever real life friends of mine come over to play D&D with me, we talk about Dungeons & Dragons Online, and they really want to get into it, but because they are starting, 15 years after it's already been out, they feel like it's impossible for them to catch up. So one of the things that I do, and this is a great example of what I complained about during the Halloween event, because I know the quests and I know how to do stuff, I can farm for things easier, and then I just trade it to them. When SSG made those Spectral Dragon scales bound to account, I couldn't then trade them to my friends and help them get their mounts. So I don't think disabling trading for other players would help a game as old as Dungeons & Dragons Online. And nor do I think it's a good idea for any MMO. I think players need to be able to trade with each other. Having the in-game economy thrive on players questing and looting and getting unique items that then they can therefore trade or sell to other players. That all makes the economy healthy. What's unhealthy is when it gets artificially boosted by outside money and then attracts the attention of gold sellers who want to cash in on some of that money. And then all of a sudden we get this massive inflation. Like Star Wars The Old Republic is basically, the economy is unplayable. Everything is way overpriced. You can spend 1 billion credits. And now I remember when that game launched and 1 million credits was a lot. The fact that anything is priced at 1 billion credits is insane to me. And yet the last time I played, which was last summer, everything in the auction house was close to 1 billion credits, and it's just because inflation. They have had so much trouble with gold sellers and gold inflation and people buying with real world money the loot boxes and just opening thousands of them. Whales basically ruining the economy.
Out allowing people to sell cash shop items for silver. Of course, doing this would probably be against the developer's best interest as they directly profit from selling gold. It also doesn't help that it's somehow become quite normalized for MMO devs to sell gold nowadays, so I can't see this issue ever going away. Multiple gear sets. This point kinda ties into my previous points about hating having my time wasted dealing and sorting through items and builds, but some MMOs require that you have multiple gear sets with different stats on them. New Worlds used to be really bad for this, but recently implemented a nice gear set storage system to fix the issue, and World of Warcraft also used to have this issue quite some time ago if you played a hybrid class like Druid, but later made it so changing spec changes your primary stats, which helped fix the issue to some extent.
DDO, we're really lucky in the sense that the way DDO is set up, that you can loot gear and keep it and use it when you TR, when you reincarnate, and that gear, like I have certain gear in my reincarnation cache that I've had for 15 years. Some of it's new, like all of my Feywild gear set, but some of it I have that's very old that I still use. So in that regard, I think DDO is set apart from all the other MMOs in the sense that while the end game meta gear, the actual raid gear that you farm out changes, the rest of your leveling gear when you TR, you can actually have gear sets that will last you years and years. It's one of the things about DDO that I really like, that if I were to stop playing it for a while, which I have, there's still, I can come back and know that that level 5 gear set that I have when I TR, that level 10 gear set that I have, the level 15 gear set, the epic gear set now all the way through to level 32 is going to be set, and I can pretty much use it. I don't have to worry about changing it out. Yes, at level 32 I can farm for like the best in slot, whatever the current meta is, but for all of the other stuff, should I decide to reincarnate my main again, I pretty much have gear. And yes, I can, when they release new expansions that add certain levels of gear, like Isle of Dread added level 7 gear, I'm able to modify my reincarnation gear. Now with this Illithid invasion, we're getting cards, and the cards will allow us to put fortune bonuses on any piece of gear. So we'll be able to address any sort of older pieces that we have that maybe aren't up to standards, or we could farm whatever the latest and greatest piece of gear is at that level and just apply a fortune bonus to it.
If you're an MMO that's designed with tons of different stats and multiple gear sets, you need to have some kind of system that makes storing, organising and switching between gear sets and builds as painless as possible. Because if this is ignored, it just takes the player out of the gameplay and has them dealing with tedious UI bullshit, as well as overwhelming them whenever they return to the game after a break. Quantity over quality questing. Now this is something that almost every MMORPG except for a select few have issues with. The games that do questing well, in my opinion, are RuneScape, Guild Wars 2, and nowadays New World has pretty good questing. I like MMOs that have quests that take you on an adventure.
I really enjoy some of DDO's quests. Where it gets troublesome for me, it's all text, so you have to read through all the text. There are some voiceovers that will tell you like the gist of it, and the dungeon master will tell you the gist of it, but the dungeon master voiceover is not nearly as detailed as I would like, as if it were a real Dungeons and Dragons tabletop event. You know, if you've ever watched Critical Role, for example, Matthew Mercer gets very detailed in certain areas, and he will answer specific questions. They can't really do that in a Dungeons & Dragons MMO, but a lot of times the Dungeon Master voiceover is sort of a very generic, very low information, just telling you basically this is where you're going. And we get a good indicator on the general direction of where to go. While I may not get lost, some people do get lost. A great example is in the hardcore league, people get lost in the cogs all the time, and it's a confusing location. Not all the new zones have quick travels either, so it makes it so that you kind of have to know where you're going and how to get there. And it's not like there's a lot of voiceover telling you anything about the specific region. You're basically required to read a lot.
Multiple steps, puzzles, exploration, sometimes with their own self-contained story. What I don't like is going to a quest hub, instantly having my quest log filled with 10 quests. Half of those quests are completed just by talking to an NPC, and the others are either one-step kill and collect or escort. Sometimes, less is more. It'd be better to have 10 quests that are memorable, rewarding and fulfilling, than 100 quests that are completely forgettable. Types of quests that I specifically hate are talk to me quests. Escort an NPC who's moving slower than your
Old school Eastern 3-0, where you had to guard that dude, Coil, is that his name, and walk him through. Oh my god, that was so annoying.
character's run speed quests. Quests where you spend more time running back and forth to hand in the quest than engaging in combat gameplay, like 90% of the questing in Final Fantasy XIV, and quests that have you standing around for ages waiting for NPCs to talk to each other like in Guild Wars 2. This part was quite a subjective point, but I'm definitely more of a gameplay above all else kinda MMO player. If an MMO has good fundamental gameplay, I don't want to spend too much time reading, waiting around, or pretending to care about the story. I want to be doing the fun stuff, killing monsters, fighting bosses, chasing loot, and working towards completionist rewards. I actually love MMOs where I'm able to watch a stream on the other monitor and still progress. If I have to pay attention to
There's a lot of times when I will play DDO, and if I'm not streaming or something, I may put a movie on or an audiobook or something like that. Yeah, totally. Or I may put a YouTube channel on and listen to somebody else's stream while I'm running around just doing stuff. And a lot of times I'll play DDO with my sound muted. Like I'm not even hardly paying attention to anything. I'm just going certain places and doing certain things, but it's mostly autopilot. But I think though that there is a really good point to be made. Like at what point is it just completely mind numbing dead gameplay? Like it needs to be a little bit engaging. And it's interesting because when I do the new quest area from the expansion, I will turn on the sound. I won't be watching anything else. Like I will give it my full attention. When I did that extreme challenge dungeon, it had my full attention. I actually did it on the live stream, but it was, I was there. I was experiencing it. So, but I do agree with what he said fundamentally, that I do like for like the more general gameplay stuff to be able to do other stuff at the same time. I don't like it to be too engaging where I have to worry about too many different things in the game to just get something simple done.
some fully voice-acted NPCs yapping to each other for 10 minutes about the nuances of the current political climate our faction is dealing with, then I start to get annoyed and will say things like, I wish these NPCs would shut the fuck up so I can play the game. Again, probably an unpopular opinion, but I wanted to get it off my chest. Add-on requirements. Personally, I really dislike MMOs that allow for community add-ons.
Yeah, we're really lucky with DDO that they don't really have or support add-ons. It was one of the things that, well, I don't have a lot of time playing WoW, that I really hated about WoW. When I played WoW for the first time, really, it was in 2015, 2016, and I was told by my friends who wanted me to tank for them that I needed to install, I think I was given a list of like 34 add-ons to download through this separate third-party app that would then install these add-ons into WoW to make it better. When I tanked, they would like signal things and all that. So we're really lucky. I hated it. We're really lucky in DDO that we don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Now, some of the add-ons did really cool things in WoW. Like it signaled to me with an audio and a visual indicator if I was standing on something that you needed to move out of. In DDO, we don't have sort of any system like that. Like if you are standing on a trap, there's nothing to warn you that you're going to take damage. If a boss is throwing down an AoE, there's no sort of indicator that's going to flash and tell you to get out of it. I played as a tank in SWTOR for a long time, and I had to, keep track of my threat using a third-party program. So while I'm used to it and I understand it, I don't think it's necessarily good for the game. And it does make me wonder why that sort of thing isn't built into the engine already. Like, why does a third party program have to do something that should be already built into the game?
Why? Because in reality, certain add-ons end up being a requirement to participate in content, and in some ways actually take away from the intended gameplay of an MMO. World of Warcraft is a prime example of this. You're basically required to have multiple boss mod add-ons to raid, and they basically just tell you what to do. Every time you come back to the game, you need to update all of your add-ons. You've got massive pop-ups whenever you log in. If the game has an issue that's worthy of critique, you'll get people dismiss your critique because the issue can be solved with an add-on. It's just a mess. Also, imagine you're trying to get your friend into an MMO for the first time and you start explaining add-on requirements. It doesn't exactly sound good when you tell them, hey bro,
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me.
so first you need to install this list of 10 add-ons from a download client which you'll need to create an account for and log into. Keep these add-ons up to date, and also once the add-ons are installed you'll need to customize them with some specific settings. If an MMO genuinely does need add-ons to be playable, then I think it's a sign that the UI designers have more work to do, not something that should be solved by the community with add-ons.
I agree.
Alt-unfriendly MMOs. There's not a whole lot to say about this point other than I really appreciate MMOs that are alt-friendly. I think having the ability to play multiple classes extends the longevity of an MMO.
This is why I believe that all gear should be bound to account. Every single thing that you do in DDO, in Dungeons and Dragons Online, should be, and any reward that you get should be bound to account, no matter what it is, a raid, a new expansion. It's great. I mean, I'm really happy that the cards dropping for the deck of curses are not bound and you can trade them. I think that all the raid gear should be made bound to account. I'm sick that Mary has bound to her character items from raids that I did 10 years ago, and I don't want to delete the items because even though I don't use them, it's just I did the work back then. I farmed for them 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now they're bound to her, and every time I reincarnate, I have like 20 bound to character items that I just cannot, I will never use them, but I cannot get rid of them. Why? Somebody explain to me why they have to be tied to Mary when I am the one playing. I'm the one managing the account. I'm the one. Why isn't it a roster? Why can't I just give the item to any of the characters on my account? I still have to play the raid. I still have to do the skill. I heard in a stream, Sev said, well, then what happens if we allow people to do bound to account raid loot is that they only play their tank or they only play their heal. Yeah, so what? This question, and you guys can answer if you have in the comments below or take it to the DDO forums. So what? Who cares if someone only plays their tank or they only play their healer or they only play the character that they enjoy? The thing that sucks is being forced to play a character that you don't want to play, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm still showing up. I'm still raiding. I earned the loot. I should be able to use it on any character on my account. I did the work. And the other argument that I've heard is that the raid items are considered a badge. Raid items don't show up. There's no way to view anybody to look at a badge in DDO. Everybody's wearing cosmetic gear. Maybe somebody could get a piece of raid armor that would show up on a character if they didn't equip a cosmetic prior to it, or maybe like the Sword of Shadows, people know what that looks like, but that's a weapon. We're talking about, like, let's say you get a trinket. Nobody can see a trinket unless it's an Uon stone that's floating around your head or something like that. Nobody can see a set of boots. Nobody can see your pants. Nobody can see your gloves. Nobody can see these items that are supposed to be badges. And then the other thing, too, is that because of the cosmetic system in the game, most people use cosmetics that they buy off the store. Nobody is ever looking at a character to assess gear to say, should I take this person with me or not? Is this person, do they know what they're doing based on the gear? Do they have any raid items on that I can see? That's just not a thing in DDO.
Gives players more content and allows for more varied gameplay. I dislike MMOs that are designed in a way where you feel stuck playing one class and spec. Usually this is down to some kind of time gate being tied to progression. I remember disliking World of Warcraft Legion at the launch of that expansion for this exact reason. Thankfully these days, WoW is much more alt-friendly. Non-account-wide completionism. This kinda ties into my previous point about alt-friendliness, but I hate MMOs that have completionism systems that you're happy to do once, which don't carry over to alt characters.
Yeah, this is exactly the problem. One of the biggest problems with Dungeons & Dragons Online is that I have my main, so I am forced to play her because all the work that I did is tied only to her. It's not the account. So if I log into an alt, I'm essentially on a first life character. Most of my alts are bank tunes, so I wouldn't be able to play on them anyway because their banks are filled, their backpacks are filled with gear that I haven't gone through yet, so I couldn't actually play on them anyway because I wouldn't be able to loot anything. I cannot share any of the feats or skill points or Reaper points or Destiny points across my characters. It would be really cool if they made it a roster system where your account was what you were leveling and you could reincarnate your account, and then any character that you were logged into could access that power. Right now, yeah, it's why I play Mary all the time, my main character, just because she's the one that I did all the work on, and I don't plan to do it again. It's just too much work.
Things like map completion, hidden item collection, achievements, and so on. Imagine if Lost Ark didn't have account-wide progress. You're able to collect all of the Makoko seeds on each character. If you reroll, you need to get all of the island souls again. You lose all of the horizontal progression skill points. You lose all of your card collection progress. The game would feel awful. For the most part, I think if something can be account-wide, then it probably should be. Autoplay AFK gameplay. Thankfully most PC MMOs aren't designed this way, however there's a few Korean MMOs that are quite heavy on the AFK autoplay gameplay.
DDO does not have, nor does Lord of the Rings. There's no AFK online gameplay, and I'm really glad about that. I cannot stand games that do that. It's one of the reasons that I don't play a lot of phone games, because a lot of phone games do this. They will keep the game world will persist, and they want you to stay logged into it. They want your character to be like whatever, doing something, fishing or exploring, and it sort of is automated, so you don't have to be there, but you can go in and check on your character and see what the progress is. It's an awful system. There's no engagement, and what it does is it really, really quickly accelerates the people who played since the beginning of the game, and then anybody who tries to come in and play it later, they are just blown away by the skill difference.
Black Desert Online is an MMO where you certainly benefit massively from leaving it open 24/7, and I really don't like it. The main reason to AFK in BDO is that closing the game causes your workers to stop working. You can also AFK fish and process for hours at a time too, allowing you to make way more money long term than someone who actually closes the game. Throne and Liberty is another MMO that was supposed to release this year, which was pretty much completely designed around autoplay. Thankfully the devs seem to be changing the game quite a bit, and the recent updates to the combat are somewhat promising. The reason I hate autoplay gameplay is that just having it in the game makes it a requirement to keep up with the gear curve. Additionally, if the game has an extremely high gear ceiling and the majority of progression is designed around AFK, then how is a player who starts playing 6 months post-launch ever supposed to catch up with someone who's been AFK from day one?
Yeah, right. That's exactly what we just said. It just makes it way too impossible. I'm really happy that they don't have that in DDO or Lotro.
I think AFK gameplay adds nothing to the game and only serves as a system in which devs can use to pad player retention stats, or add things to the cash shop to make that AFK grind more convenient and efficient. Ugly user interfaces. Not much to be said here, but I hate MMOs where half of the screen is UI, and there's so many different UI windows popping up that I need to interact with.
Yeah, so the vanilla UI that we get for DDO and even Lotro, they're okay. The one thing that they have allowed us to do is to mod the UIs, so you can go to either DDO or Lotro. There are people, some of the streamers have actually made custom DDO skins, and the same thing for Lord of the Rings Online. There's a lot of unique, sometimes very cool UI skins that you can get. I think the other issue too also is that there are a lot of windows in both of those games that maybe could be condensed down into simpler menus so you could find things. Lord of the Rings Online specifically, there's just like 800 different screens that you can look at. DDO is a little easier to navigate through. Still, there can be, you can open up a lot of screens at the same time in DDO as well.
I end up getting lost in menus. Personally, I like having a nice, clean, minimal user interface with a lot of functionality for customization, especially if I'm playing an MMO with good graphics. A good UI will display information clearly, not invent pointless systems that don't need to exist in which you purely interact with it via a UI menu, and be easy to navigate. A bad UI will have multiple pop-ups as soon as you log into the game, an incoherent theme with different colours and animations that distract you from the gameplay, very little customization, no option to hide the UI for screenshots, as well as getting in the way of gameplay, such as not being able to move your character whilst opening the inventory or map.
I did not like the UI in Diablo 4 at all. I like the UI in Baldur's Gate 3. Another game that I did not like the UI at all, I thought it was terrible, was Fallout 76. It's just a terrible, terrible inventory UI. That engine, they need to update that engine. And I have Starfield. I got that and played it. It's the same thing, and it's just really awful to navigate.
Transmog. This is a bit of a hot take, but I kinda miss the days of when transmog wasn't a thing in MMO.
DDO, we don't really have transmog. We used to. We used to have transmog back when DDO first launched. Turbine introduced a skin system for armor, so you would buy what they called an armor kit, and then you would apply that kit to the armor, and then that armor's look would then have a toggle on or off that you could let the kit show or not, and it was basically a cosmetic appearance that you could add to any armor. I still have some of these old kits. If you guys would like to see them, I could show them in a stream. But what it did early was that any armor that you wore, it allowed you to make it look like a store-bought cosmetic. So we really never got to actually see, the armor skins that people were wearing on the actual item, because most of them were gross anyway. Lord of the Rings has a cosmetic system that's actually really great. They have a wardrobe and they have all sorts of different cosmetic effects that you can apply with a click of a button. So the Lord of the Rings cosmetic system is really great. It's not a transmog system, and DDO, as everybody knows, now uses a cosmetic system. They got rid of the armor kit transmogs, so I think I may be one of the only people on the server left on Starlona anyway who has one of these old armor sets. I'm sure other people have them across the other servers, but it's why if you go into some of the armor vendors, the broker shops, there's like 3 mirrors set up where you can actually stand there, because in the old days you used to be able to stand in front of those mirrors and apply the armor kit to your armor, and then it would show you in those mirrors what the transmog would look like.
MMOs. Now, I don't actually hate transmog, but there's definitely pros and cons to its existence. Pros: collecting different gear sets from old content keeps that content somewhat relevant in terms of rewards. Transmog as a whole adds content to an MMO. Its horizontal progression and making different transmog sets is fun.
I think that that DDO should have like hundreds of different cosmetics that we could buy off the store and earn in game and earn from events. There's not enough. Not enough. It is exactly what he's saying here. It's fun. It's horizontal progression. You playing dress up, even though people make fun of the meme playing Barbie Dreamhouse, dressing your character up. This is a high fantasy game, right? So we want our characters to look like the characters that we're imagining. So when I dress up Mary, my main character in DDO, who I've done all the work, and she is a Dungeons and Dragons Fey Warlock, and she is a drow. I want to make her look like I imagine a Fey Warlock drow should look like. So I try to get as close as I can to that with the in-game artwork, but it's not nearly enough. Like, I want thousands more cosmetics. I also would like player housing.
Cons. Nowadays, you can't look at a player in an MMO and get an accurate idea of how strong they are purely based off appearance.
Yeah, and we said that. There's no way in Dungeons and Dragons Online to really tell, looking at somebody's toon, what their skill level, power level, how long they've played the game. I mean, some people have certain items that are unique or rare, or certain mounts that are unique or rare that may indicate that that person has a specific level of skill. But for the most part, nowadays, a lot of people have Reaper wings. It's a great example, right? They used to signify that the person had done a crap ton of Reaper and that they were a really elite player. But now, Reaper's been around for so long, just about everybody has Reaper wings or are close to getting Reaper wings. And the other reality is that Reaper ramps up. Those Reaper points really start to make a difference when you get around 20 to 30 of them. So really, the wings don't really matter at all anyway. It's not like inviting somebody to a group with Reaper wings means that they're a good player. They could have been carried to get those wings. They could be terrible players and still have Reaper wings. It doesn't mean anything, right? So
the existence of transmog also devalues the feeling of getting a cool new piece of endgame loot. You're basically only interested in the stats, unless it just happens to match one of your transmog sets. MMOs with transmog also typically have cosmetic cash shops where you can just pay to look cool regardless of your level, which creates an incentive for devs to make the coolest looking armor be tied to cash shop purchase rather than being earned in-game.
yeah, and that's what we have in Dungeons and Dragons Online and in Lord of the Rings Online, that the coolest mounts, the coolest outfits, the coolest looks, any of the looks, the cosmetic look, all the coolest stuff comes from real cash purchases in the DDO and Lotro stores. When they added the Bone Nightmare, they took basically the Season 2 Bone Devil mount from Hardcore League Season 2 that people had to earn for 5,000 favor. They took that mount and they threw a bunch of fire on it and made the skin dark and made it into a nightmare and called it the Bone Devil Nightmare. Well, my point was that people who did the 5,000 favor and earned that Bone Devil mount, that should be a unique mount. You shouldn't just be able to buy it in the store for $50 or whatever the cost is. But and it's even cooler because the one from the store is on fire. You can just show up with $50 and have a mount that's cooler than doing 5,000 favor? No way, man. That's not cool. That's not a good deal, and it's not good for the game. It's not good for anybody. The cosmetic, I understand the cosmetics that they're going to sell, and I want them to sell more, but I don't think that they should always be the coolest. I think if you do something like a hardcore 5K or whatever the event is, whether it's the Halloween event or some other event, the mount that you can get from that should be cool and really unique and not something that they then sell you in the store. I think that they should keep them separate because they want people doing the events. They don't want everything, all the coolest stuff to just be tied to the whales who play the game, right? It's a good video. I'll post the link for you guys if you want to go check out Lazy Peon's channel. It's pretty good.